Hi, I'm Justin Barrett, president of Blueprint 1543. I'm a psychological scientist and former university professor. Hopefully, you've joined me for my series After 65. This is just a postscript on that series. I aimed that series, if you're part of it, you know, I aimed that series at people sort of my age and older who are getting older to think about how we can successfully age, how we can maintain our health, our brains, our social relationships, keep having fun, being active, and just live a good life as we're getting older. But really, the series is for everyone of all ages. The kind of advice that I grouped under those 5 labels, A, F, T, E, R, our actions or activity, our fun, our thinking or thought, our eating, our relationships, those same 5 clusters, and most of that same advice applies to people of all ages, from womb to tomb, because it turns out we have the same basic needs regardless of how old we are. And so in some ways, you can go back, even if you are 13 years old or 23 years old or 43 years old or 83 years old, you can go back through the series, and most of the advice still applies to you. These are still good suggestions for how to be healthy at all of these different ages and how to start to develop lifelong habits that mean when you get older, and hopefully you will, that you already have some habits in place. You've already established a baseline of health and wellness that make those aging years all the smoother and easier and more pleasant. So it's really a series for people of all ages. And I hope that you picked up on that. Another reason why this is a series for people of all ages is that you probably have older people in your life that you care about, that you may need to be a resource for, that you may want to contribute to their successful aging. How might that be? Well, you know that they need activity. I mentioned that. So what are some activities you can do with them? You know that they need to have fun. What are some activities you can do to have fun with them? You know that they need to exercise their thinking. How can you contribute to that? You know they need to be eating well. Well, what meals can you invite them to with you so that they get to the kind of nutrition that they need? And what about relationships? Is there an older person in your life that you can cultivate a relationship with? So even if you're a younger person, you might think, how can I help the older people in my life really thrive and flourish as they're getting older by thinking about what I've talked about in this series. A really important theme that you probably saw throughout the series is that agency is really important as we're getting older. It's important for us our whole lives. Anybody who has spent time with kids as a parent, as a teacher, you know that kids love to exercise their agency. They like to feel like they can do things. Tell me what I can do so I can do this. How can I help? How can I achieve? And that's a really healthy part of just who we are. And we don't lose that. At least we shouldn't lose that. And as we get older, we still need that agency. We still need to feel like we can make a difference in the world around us. And whether we're an older person or we're a younger person in relationship with older persons, it's helpful to help open up that agency of older people. So, for instance, what are conversations I can have, like maybe with, if I'm a younger person, with my grandparents, that I can open up their agency? Like, hey, grandma, grandpa, you've been on cruises and you've been to inclusive resorts, maybe. Which do you find better and why? And would you recommend me doing either of those activities? Those kinds of open-ended conversations where they get invited to share their wisdom or insights. Or, hey, what's that weird bird on that pole over there? If they're a birder, for instance, they may have expertise that you don't have. And interestingly, older people sometimes have expertise that are sort of stereotyped and age-segregated society doesn't appreciate. For instance, I know someone who is pushing 70 years old, and she has a lifelong career computer scientist. We usually think of young people as knowing computers because, you know, these Zoomers, they grew up with computers, so they know computers. Like, well, no, they know how to use computers, but a 70-year-old might have finished a 40-year career working on computers every single day and actually has much more expertise and experience with computers than the 20-year-old. And we know that most of the geniuses at the Genius Bar know what they know about computers by just Googling it or talking to each other. So it's just exposure and knowing how to look for the right information. Well, lots of retired people have plenty of time to look for the right information. And they may have expertise that you're completely unaware of if you're a younger person, right? And so they can be a real resource, and they can exercise their agency in being that resource for their friends and family. So those are some other reasons to think there's something in this series for everybody of all ages, not just if you're an old person. Now, at the start in our teaser video, I mentioned that I dedicated this series to my dad, who is aging. I'd like to close by commenting on his mother. So here's my grandmother and grandfather when they were younger-ish. I don't know if you can see. I know she doesn't look like a super cheerful person. Growing up, I'll confess, I did not think of her as warm and cuddly. I kind of thought of her as a little bit wooden and stiff and so forth. But it turns out the older I got, the more I appreciated just how well she was living her life. And she really aged very well. She was kind of a model of all of these different kinds of things that I was talking about. She stayed active. She had her daily walks. She was volunteering, taking care of those old people, even when she was pushing 90, which I've always found that amusing. She stayed busy with her arts. She liked to paint. She liked to write poetry. She liked to do needlework and quilting. She stayed busy doing those things, cooking. She made sure she kept having fun. I remember once visiting her, and she had just had a sleepover with all of her octogenarian friends. Think of that, a slumber party of 80-year-old women. She kept eating reasonably well, and she definitely invested in her relationships through church, through her family, through her friends, through her neighborhood. She was a busy lady all the way to the end, and really it showed. She had a good, full, rich life because she kept doing all of these things. So I find that inspirational, and I hope that she realizes how much she inspired so many of us by just aging so well. And so my encouragement for all of us is to age the best we can, not just for ourselves and our health, but so we can model that for other people too. So thank you for joining me for this series. Please like, subscribe, and share. And as always, send us your comments or suggestions for other content, other topics you'd like to hear me take up that bring in the sciences and Christian perspectives to try to help us live better, more flourishing lives. Thanks for joining me. I'm Justin Barrett. Enjoy your successful aging.